The suspect in the shooting of two San Diego police officers last week has been ordered to remain in custody on a $5 million bail. 52-year-old Jesse Gomez is charged with murder, attempted murder, and illegally having a gun. The decision to build or not to build in Lilac Hills is in the hands of voters, as county supervisors decline to approve the development plan outright.
We have become a virtual refugee camp right here in the heart of San Diego.
Some 800 refugees forced from their homes in Haiti and now Brazil find temporary shelter in a San Diego church. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. San Diego County supervisors have voted to put Lilac Hills development on the November ballot rather than approving it outright. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John says feelings ran strong among both supporters and opponents of the plan to build hundreds of homes in a rural area in Valley Center.
The Lilac Hills initiative would build 1,700 homes, where 110 homes are called for under the county's general plan that was hammered out over the last decade. The supervisors had only two choices: approve the initiative or put it on the ballot for voters to decide. In their comments, most of the supervisors did not fully reveal which way they would have voted if the decision had been theirs. Only Diane Jacob, who represents the backcountry in the south half of the county, said she would have voted not to approve the plan. Supervisor Bill Horn, who represents the district where the project is and is widely known to support it, had reluctantly to recuse himself because of potential conflicts of interest. The other three supervisors said they had done their job by asking staff to report on how the initiative differs from the project the Planning Commission recommended approving last year. The staff report shows the wording of the initiative avoids several conditions the Planning Commission had required before approving the project. For example, fire response times will be less than the required 5 minutes, some of the roads will not meet county standards, and there's no guarantee the developer will build a new school. Some of those who spoke today said this ballot box land use planning will open a Pandora's box of development. Others said the need for housing is so great in San Diego, the county supervisors should have approved it outright. From the KPBS North County Bureau at Cal State San Marcos, Allison St. John reporting.
A judge has ordered police shooting suspect Jesse Gomez to remain in custody on a $5 million bail. The 52-year-old was charged with the murder of one police officer, the attempted murder of another, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. Authorities say Gomez was arraigned today at UCSD Medical Center, where he's recovering from a gunshot wound. Gomez could face the death penalty if convicted. In today's criminal proceedings were suspended for a man accused of attacking homeless people in San Diego earlier this month. John Guerrero's attorney says he doubts his client is able to understand the charges against him. The judge ordered him to take a competency evaluation. He's also scheduled for a hearing October 7th. Police say the 39-year-old allegedly killed 3 people, wounded 2 others. The victims were brutalized. 2 were set on fire as they slept. San Diego voters will decide the fate of San Diego High School in November. KPBS reporter Megan Burke says the City Council voted today to put a measure on the ballot that would keep the 134-year-old school's campus in Balboa Park.
The city charter and state law say schools are not allowed on city parkland. The problem, the school's first iteration, the Russ School, was built at the Balboa Park, the Park Boulevard location in 1882. Now that's several years before the charter was drafted and decades before the state said schools were not allowed on parkland. The ballot measure will ask voters to amend the charter to allow the school. That requires a simple majority vote. There is a protocol in the charter to get voter approval for a special use permit of sorts, but that requires a 2/3 vote. Opponents of the measure say the effort sets a dangerous precedent, while supporters say San Diego High was always a part of the vision for Balboa Park.
Over the decades, Our city planners and officials, and some of you sitting right up there, have worked hard to protect our canyons, our open spaces, and our parklands. And we're doing it under the tenets of the Charter, Section 55, which you are about ready to amend and undermine the protection of a supermajority vote.
Alonzo Horton even advocated putting public school on a hill at a southeast edge of City Park, today Balboa Park. On April 13, 1874, Horton deeded the proposed school site to the city for a school. San Diego voters and city leaders have approved the school's existence many times over its long history, starting with an election held on May 14, 1881.
San Diegans will have to choose their side in the ballot box. School district officials said today they'll reimburse the city for the cost of putting the issue before voters. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
San Diego apartment rents are still going up, but the rate of increase is slowing down. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has details.
A new national report finds San Diego is the nation's 13th most expensive rental market. The average price of a two-bedroom apartment, just over $2,000. A one-bedroom goes for about $1,500. Rental tracking company ApartmentList.com compiled and reviewed the numbers. Analyst Andrew Wu says rental increases have slowed substantially when compared to recent years.
Rent prices in San Diego and across the rest of California have started to moderate a little bit. In previous years, we were looking at 6, 7, 8% annual rent increases, whereas our latest rent report has rents in San Diego rising at only 1.8% year over year.
Wu says the market rate for rentals may have found its peak in San Diego and a number of other California cities. He says low vacancy rates and a growing population here would seem to be putting strong upward pressure on rents. But he says the local economy may not be able to support higher rental rates. He predicts moderate rental rate growth for the next couple of months. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
The last surviving Medal of Honor recipient from the Battle of Iwo Jima is being honored again today. The U.S. Navy is naming a ship after him. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh was at the ceremony for 92-year-old Herschel Woody Williams.
The 92-year-old Herschel Woody Williams is the last surviving of 27 Medal of Honor recipients who were awarded the medal after the Battle of Iwo Jima. We're actually here at General Dynamics NASSCO for a keel-laying ceremony. Woody is here with his two daughters. I had a chance to talk to him before the ceremony. I asked what it was like to have a ship named in his own honor.
I'm not quite sure that it has completely registered yet, that it has really sunk in. That I'm going to have my name on something that's going to sail the 7 seas and have thousands of Marines and Navy serve on it over a period of time. And there's just almost no way that I can fully comprehend what that will mean, not to me, to my family and loved ones who are going to be there after I'm gone.
During the Battle of Iwo Jima, Williams' unit was bogged down with cover fire from only 4 Marines. Williams used a flamethrower to attack enemy machine gun pillboxes, opening up a gap in the Japanese fortifications the same day the flag went up at Iwo Jima. A few months later, Williams was given the Medal of Honor by President Truman in October 1945. Williams was initially rejected by the Marine Corps for being too short. The decision to name the ship after him came after a nearly 20-year writing campaign by family and friends. The ship itself is a expeditionary sea base which can accommodate up to 250 Marines plus helicopters and Osprey. Again, Williams is the last surviving Medal of Honor winner from Iwo Jima, a campaign that claimed 6,800 Americans and roughly 18,000 Japanese defenders. From the NASSCO shipyards here in San Diego, I'm Steve Walsh.
Haitians continue to come to San Diego in record numbers due to economic and political unrest in Brazil. Many Haitians sought to start over after the devastating 2010 earthquake in their own country. KPBS Frontera reporter Jean Guerrero says a church in Normal Heights is giving them temporary shelter, and church leaders say they see no end in sight.
Bill Jenkins is executive director of the United Methodist Christ Ministry Center. He shows me the spaces he's improvised to address what more and more people are calling a migrant crisis.
We have become a virtual refugee camp right here in the heart of San Diego.
Since the influx of Haitians started 2 months ago, the center has provided shelter to more than 800 who are awaiting court hearings after passing through immigration. Some seek political asylum. Others are here for economic reasons. They wear tracking devices on their ankles, so immigration authorities know where they are. They have to recharge them every 4 hours. There aren't enough beds for everyone, so some sleep on the floor or on church pews. To pass the time, the Haitians hold impromptu services in the church, playing piano, singing, and praying. They practice English with bilingual dictionaries. About 90% have plans to head to Miami, where they have relatives.
They will fly tomorrow to Miami.
Staff members like Jimmy Marcelin help between 10 and 20 Haitians buy plane tickets per day.
Depends on how fast the family could send them a ticket, or how fast the family could send them money to purchase a ticket.
Among those with plans to leave is Jean-Ricardo Beauvoir.
I plan to go to school so I can learn English and a skill so I can work.
3 months ago, he embarked on a journey through some of the world's most dangerous countries to get here, like El Salvador and Honduras.
I saw people who died, who were injured, who drowned.
He says he had to contend with corrupt military, organized crime, hunger, and thirst. He says life at the center is worlds away from what he experienced on his trip.
They give us a place to sleep here, which is very helpful because there's nowhere else for us to go, because hotels are so expensive here.
The migrants also eat food donated by Catholic charities and other groups, dozens of canned items and boxes of fruit. But it runs out quickly. Steve Pierre, another migrant, says he came so that he could help his children back in Haiti. He plans to send them money. He says family is priority number one for Haitians.
It's another philosophy. I'm an electrician, but I want my children to accomplish more.
He says most Haitians are crossing through San Isidro instead of elsewhere because they've heard it works that way.
That's the information you get from people who already crossed, if you understand, the people who already made the journey.
Initially, U.S. immigration authorities were dropping Haitians off on the streets of downtown San Diego, and the center was picking them up. Now, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is dropping them off directly at the church. Jenkins says if it weren't for his center, the Haitians would be forming a large homeless community in San Diego. But he says he's seen backlash for his work, including threats of violence.
I know that there's no more divisive word in the English vocabulary right now than the word immigration. I call it the I word.
Jenkins blames the polarizing political environment. He points out that the Haitians are not here illegally. They came through Customs and Border Protection. Many have legitimate asylum cases.
Because the gangs are telling them, okay, for your sons, if your sons don't join our gang, we're going to kill you. If your daughters don't become prostitutes or drug runners for us, we're going to kill them. And what would you do? You'd do the same thing that these folks are doing. You would pick up your family and you would leave.
Jenkins recalls a passage from the Bible, Matthew 25.
Which is my mantra for the rest of my life. I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was naked, I was sick, I was in prison, I was a stranger, and you welcomed me, you cared for me.
He says it motivates him to help the Haitians, but he thinks the sentiment has grown scarce elsewhere. So Jenkins is telling the Haitians not to wander outside the center unless they have to. He wants to keep them safe. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
San Diego has a law on the books making it one of the most open and transparent places to do business in the country, but that law has never been enforced. Voters passed it in 1992 after San Diego almost bought land from an alleged mobster. Reporter Brad Racino with our media partner iNewsSource investigated the issue. We sat down earlier to discuss it. So this has a lot to do with transparency when it comes to business here in San Diego, and you spoke to a former council member, Bruce Henderson. What did he say about the importance of transparency when it comes to business dealings here in San Diego?
Well, what he told me was basically that the city should always know who it's doing business with. In this case that we wrote about in the story, basically Henderson and the council almost got caught doing business with an alleged mobster. Now, that might not always be the case when you're dealing with companies, but with the way that San Diego operates and the number of contracts that they have and the amount of money, I mean, we're talking billions and billions of dollars, it's always important to know who you're doing business with, whether it could be the organized crime, it could be local politicians hiding behind these things. You have no idea. So transparency, he said, was key in these decisions.
And there's actually a law in place to ensure transparency that hasn't been enforced in 20 plus years, 24 years.
Right.
Can you tell me about that law and who's supposed to be enforcing it?
Sure. So right after this incident that we wrote about with a man named Al Malnick back in the early 90s, the city of San Diego put an initiative on the ballot and went to the vote. It went to the public vote, and more than 86% of the population voted in favor of this thing called Section 225. It's an update to the city charter, and what it says is that the city needs to know who exactly it's doing business with. It's not enough for just the name of a company to be on a piece of paper. They need to know the financial interests behind that company. So that went into effect in '92, and since then, like you said, for 24 years, it's never been enforced. Now, as to who's responsible for enforcing it depends who you talk to. The city attorney, the current city attorney, Jen Goldsmith, told me it's actually up to the contractors to know the municipal laws whenever they enter into a contract with the city. So he says it's actually beholden on the companies that are doing business with the city to know this law. But then again, there are some other critics of this who say, no, it's really up to the city to start enforcing this thing.
And so you've done a lot of digging around to get the information. What was the most surprising thing from your experience working on this report?
The most surprising thing is probably how little the local politicians even knew about this thing. I had put out calls to every council member and the mayor to talk to me about this, and the two that did respond, who were very responsive, were Councilman David Alvarez and Council President Sherry Leitner. And Alvarez told me he had never even heard of this thing until we called asking about it. And Leitner said something very similar, that it took some research from her staff to really take a look at this and understand the importance of why this should be enacted or enforced today.
And after your digging and your phone calls, there's an indication that lawmakers are paying more attention. Expand on that.
Right, yeah. So Leitner's office sent a memo to Jen Goldsmith's office, the city attorney, asking him for more clarification on this issue. And she said in that memo that they intend to docket it or have it up for discussion in front of the Rules Committee in October 26th. They're going to take up this issue.
And your report mentioned Delaware LLCs. Mm-hmm. What exactly is that, and how can they be used in business to be less transparent?
Delaware LLCs are limited liability companies just like any other, but they're incorporated in the state of Delaware, and Delaware is known for allowing maximum anonymity when you're registering a corporation. So the only thing I would have to do if I wanted to start a Delaware company is list the name of the company and where the office is and the registered agent. That doesn't have to be my office, and that doesn't have to be me as the agent. So that's all you're required to disclose, and you can operate as a corporation. So I believe more than half of the corporations in America are actually Delaware LLCs, and there are hundreds of them operating here in San Diego, and we don't know who's behind these things.
So what happens next?
What happens next is we keep tabs on the politicians who have said that they're going to be expanding on this issue, that they're going to actually docket it for October, and we'll follow up, see what happens after that. But until then, we'll be poking around. We have some other stories lined up that have to do with LLCs in Delaware in particular, but it's a little too early to talk about those.
Thank you so much. Great work.
Thank you.
Today, the San Diego City Council unanimously approved the sale of the Truax House. It's located on West Laurel Street, and it once served as the city's first AIDS hospice. Buyer Knox Schwab Development and Design presented a $2.5 million plan that includes restoration of the 1912 house. Developers also plan to demolish an adjacent home on the property and replace it with office space, apartments, and a coffee shop. Temperatures are expected to heat up inland but remain mild near the coast. We'll have more on this report by Molly Cochran.
Well, we're still remaining dry and quiet for much of the California coast, and the interior section's really starting to see some more activity in the way of wet weather. So take a look at our radar and satellite over the past 6 hours. Showers and thunderstorms starting to push near the Phoenix area. This is something we can expect into the middle half of the week. Flash flooding going to be a concern, as well as gusty winds and also blowing dust. So do keep that in mind if you have any upcoming travel plans into the interior sections winds of the southwest. Monsoonal moisture, all pretty typical for this time of year, but could cause for some headaches. An increase in cloud cover coming our way late tonight. Overnight lows will stay in the upper 60s. Elsewhere at the coast, temperatures ranging in the mid to upper 60s near Oceanside, pretty close to average for this time of year. Long Beach coming in at 69, Ramona in the lower 60s, Borrego Springs in the mid to upper 70s. A little warmer here. Now into the middle half of the week, the interior sections of California, mainly off of the coast, going to be heating up. So very, very warm here for the deserts, but farther east, these afternoon daily thunderstorms going to continue to fire up near Phoenix, Flagstaff, Albuquerque, and even towards the Denver area. But the California coast will stay nice and dry from LA to San Diego. Temperature-wise, we're pretty close to where we should be at for this time of year as well. So take a look at what's going on over the next couple of days. 78 on Thursday, actually a few degrees above average at the coast. That daytime high for this time of year, right around 75 degrees. Upper 70s coming up on Friday with clouds and sunshine each day. Some lower clouds to start, then the sunshine will burn those off pretty quickly by the afternoon. Mid to upper 70s for the upcoming weekend at the coast with lows in the 60s. As we head farther inland, a little bit warmer, temperature of 85 Wednesday, Thursday, 84 by Friday. Lower 80s coming up for Saturday and Sunday with dry skies ahead and those overnight lows in the lower to mid 60s. For the mountains, a few thunderstorms coming in on Wednesday, also into Thursday. Plenty of bright sunshine though back for Friday, Saturday, and even into Sunday with a daytime high near 80 degrees. For the deserts, we'll have those temperatures into the triple digits. 105 coming up on Thursday with mostly sunny skies. Also staying dry Friday into Saturday and Sunday. The daytime will be very warm and sunny, but in the overnight, those temperatures will come back for the most part into the 60s. Molly Cochran, KPBS News.
I'm Gwen Eichel on the next news hour, The Math Myth. A new book argues we should recalculate how we teach numbers. That's Tuesday on the PBS News Hour.
California legislators are working to increase voter turnout by changing how people vote. Lawmakers have proposed a measure that would require every registered voter is mailed a ballot that they can drop off at a number of voting centers, and the centers would open 10 days prior to an election. If passed, individual counties would still have to agree to adopt the new voting system. California's regulation for medical marijuana are still under development. The state passed a package of laws last year that requires state agencies to create rules that govern the taxation, cultivation, testing, transportation, and sales of cannabis. The State Department of Food and Agriculture says it's working to control pesticide use, soil treatment, and labeling.
Growers are not wary and not using any sorts of regulations when it comes to our watersheds, to pesticide application, pest control methods, and fertilization.
The law states all new regulations developed by the state must be ready to go into effect by 2018. Sharp Memorial has become the first San Diego hospital to use a recently approved dissolvable heart stent. Stents are small tubes used to prop open blocked arteries, and most are made of metal and can't be removed. The new stent dissolves in the body within 2 to 3 years. Millennials in their 20s are having less sex than the generation before. This according to a new study co-authored by a San Diego researcher. About 15% of millennials born in the 90s reported having no sexual partner since turning 18. That's up from only 6% of Generation Xers born in the 60s. Researchers say while they're more accepting of premarital sex than past generations, millennials are less likely to give in to peer pressure. Well, San Diegans have plenty of choices when it comes to what beer to drink, thanks to the region's booming craft industry. But it's not just beer makers who are vying for consumers' attention. AP reporter Carrie Antefinger, says tap handlers are also getting into it too.
The answer to what's on tap these days might be lighthouses, beards, even birds. Tap handles have become an art form.
When you're at the bar, looking around and you see a crazy one, sometimes you just gotta go for it.
With competition tougher than ever, beer makers are pulling out all the stops to stand out. The Brewers Association says since 2011, the number of craft breweries has more than doubled. There were over 4,100 last year.
Years ago, when you'd go into a bar, you'd maybe see 3 or 4 tap handles offering beer. Now when you go into a bar, there's quite a variety.
The thirst for good beer has meant business has been flowing for AJS tap handles. The Wisconsin-based company is one of the largest tap handle makers in the U.S. Some are made of wood, resin, or metal. Others light up. You can also find their signature tops on liquor and wine taps.
Sometimes the best ones are the simplest ones that have a really memorable shape and really bold branding.
Designer Cole Krieger works closely with beer makers to reflect their personalities. He advises them to go no wider than 3 inches. Over at Sugar Maple in Milwaukee, they have 60 beers on draft, so size matters.
If it's too big on top, to spin it on, you have to remove either handle on the side, and when you're busy, it becomes like, I wish they would just think more about their tap handles.
And handles are best under a pound, or they can cause problems.
I need very little reason not to buy beer sometimes, and if it's the idea that it might break a faucet, unfortunately, there are thousands of other breweries that I can pick from.
Over at the Brass Tap, Tyler Penrod picked his pint among the 80 choices based on the tap handle.
I like the industrial look of it. The name was appealing beyond just the name of the brewery, which I'm familiar with. Being overrated made me curious.
Turns out it's not overrated.
Actually, I like it a lot. I would definitely probably get it again.
Something all breweries hope will play out in bars all over. Carrie Antelfinger, Associated Press.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.